So our next speaker, I'm going to introduce you Gene Massey, and I'm so excited about what he is doing, just with respect to using direct registration to basically take crowdfunding to an entirely different level. And Gene, with that, I'm going to really not say much because I want to make sure you have the time to. So the next.
I said I could take this and walk over there and put up that. That first slide would be equity crowdfunding. I'm the guy that's keeping you from the refreshments. So I'll be brief. I want some refreshments myself. Have to go around this way. Okay. This is going to, when the SEC allows all the new crowdfunding methods. I won't spend more than about a minute on this, but when they allow the new methods, they're going to require SEC compliant records of the guys that bought shares, who bought them, what they pay for them. They're going to probably require an intermediary that holds the money, but collects the money while the shares are being sold, and that vets the company. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. I'd like to go, this is something that we will have in place because we will be working with a direct registration supplier that's a record keeper, a transfer agent that's done this for years as a veteran and know how to keep track of all the shareholders, how to debit their ACH checking account to pay for them and things like that. So if we could go to the next slide for the IPO. Crowdfunded IPO. Now, first of all, let me say, the guy asked me at a party, well, how are you going to get around? And I said, stop right there. We don't get around anything. This is a regular IPO. This is a fully compliant with all the rules. You have to file an S1 registration statement that can be anywhere from $25,000 to $200,000. This is a full-blown IPO in every aspect, except it can work without an underwriter. You still have to work with a FINRA broker. You still have to work with a direct registration supplier. You still have to keep good track of who bought a share, and you have to do everything according to FINRA. So basically, you have a pre-filing period. I guess it's kind of hard to see, and I'm not going to go item by item. I'm just going to give you a quick summary of it. But you have a pre-filing period where the company decides to do an IPO, they're accepted by us, they hire an attorney. The license, we are a licensing model. We're going to license our package to people, and I'll show you all the elements of the package, but we're going to license this to people, the companies that want to go public. This is not really for a small entrepreneur. This is for a company that has revenues, that would be an IPO candidate, but maybe is not an IPO candidate for a large New York underwriter. They keep quiet during this period, during the pre-filing period, and then they file their S1 registration statement. Their attorney prepares it for them. They file their S1 registration statement with the SEC, and that begins a period called the quiet period. That's a serious period. You can't really do much during that period except your ordinary course of business. You can't run around and tell all your friends, we're doing an IPO, you want to get some shares and things like that. There was a movie company that filed an IPO. I'm sorry?
The congressman can do it.
Yes, they can do it. They can do it. If you give them some campaign contributions. There was a movie company that filed its IPO and went on CNN, because it was such a novel idea to file an IPO for a movie. They went on CNN and they said, this stock's going to go through the roof. And you can imagine what the SEC did with them. They shut them down for 6 months, and the IPO failed because of that. They closed them down. They said, so you have a very quiet period here. However, there's an interesting thing that we can do, and it's a live internet broadcast during the quiet period. According to SEC Final Rule 33-8571, You can do a live internet broadcast. You can't do a live television broadcast, but you can do a live internet broadcast because it's considered to be an oral communication. You cannot do a recorded broadcast. That's considered to be a written communication. That's not a prospectus. During this quiet period, the only thing you can show to someone is either a preliminary prospectus or a live internet broadcast, because that's considered an oral communication. That's how you can actually access your internet audience with a live broadcast. Well, at some point, the SEC declares your S-1 registration statement effective.
How long a time?
4 months, about 4 months. The SEC generally won't even give you the first comments for 30 days, and sometimes it can be another 2 or 3 months of comments before they actually reach this stage where your S-1 is declared effective by the SEC and the subscription period begins, and you can actually sell shares. You can sell shares to non-accredited investors, you can advertise to the general public, and that allows you to use your social media campaigns to sell the shares. And so that's one of the things that we offer in the package here. We offer a social media campaign to help them sell their shares. Once that S-1 is declared effective, the stocks are sold through direct registration. Now that process I described a little bit before, but basically it allows you to be able to sell single shares. The big issue here is, normally in an IPO, if you have a friend at the underwriter, you would even have to open a brokerage account, and you have to fund that account. Usually when you buy stock, you have to open and fund a brokerage account. You want to buy 100 shares, you got to pay $10 or $20 for the transaction fee. That makes it impossible to sell single shares, basically. Using direct registration, you can actually sell single shares. It's only about $1 per account. The company has access, like I said before, to all of those shareholders. So you basically can go out and sell single shares to fans, customers, users, affinity groups, and that allows you to crowdfund your IPO once your S-1 is effective by the SEC. That's how our process works. When the offering closes, the funds are distributed to the company. All the shareholders' records are kept in book entry, customer name, on the books of the transfer agent. ComputerShare, BNY Mellon, Registrar Transfer, Wells Fargo. There's a number of companies that provide that service. And the company that uses this method has all of those people a record of them. If you do an IPO through an underwriter, you don't really know who your customers are. You don't have that demographic information. The broker has it, and he won't tell you what it is. So with this, you have the opportunity to build a crowd, have all of their information, have their ACH checking account information. If you funded a movie this way, you could also sell them a hat or a t-shirt. That's the advantage here. When you fund, you've got your customers are also your owners, and you can sell them other things. I guess that's about it. Anybody have a question? I know we want to get out of here. Any questions? They all look sleepy.
What is the cost of this?
That's a good. That is a good question. See, the reason it wouldn't really work for an entrepreneur is it's several $100,000. But it's
One,
cheaper.
20.
The first few ones that we have, we're talking to 2 companies now about doing this now, and they're going to be probably about $300,000.
Okay.
At some point, we're going to have a licensable model that's about $100,000, so that a company would be able to go public for about $100,000.
There is no brokerage firm that comes in and pays that money. You have to raise the money.
The company has to pay the
Right.
money. The company pays to use this service. Just like, but you see, if you're, and there's some tremendous advantages to this, because if you're working with an underwriter, they have IPO underpricing, where the company doesn't get all the money that the actual, what the stock opens at.
No, this is a great concept.
They have,
No question.
they have you can, an underwriter can legally naked short your offering,
Right.
okay? That's a serious issue. A lot of times companies, they'd be glad to see it open at 40 because they know they've got a short position on it and they're gonna run it back down and they're gonna make money either direction. First of all, you didn't get you got $20. They priced it at $20. It opened at 40. They got that nice spread, and then they shorted it and wrote it back on the way down. See, and then you beat the IPO underpricing. You beat the naked shorting, and you've got contact with your customers, and we will definitely be cheaper than an underwriter as far as our fees.
This is definitely a better way to go.
So instead of 7%, 6.9% is the average what you would pay to an underwriter. Google only paid 2.9%. I think Facebook's only 2%, 1.9% or something like that. So they've negotiated that down. But the typical, if you can get an underwriter to accept you to do your offering, you're generally going to pay an average of 6.9%. Groupon. The IPO cost $57 million. The company paid $57 million in total for their IPO. And so there was an issue earlier about the different crowdfunding models. We think being the internet underwriter, we would be able to be very profitable because one offering, $100 million, if we make $4 million on one offering, see. Plus the fees that we get for the licensing initially. So we feel it could be very profitable, and the company would gladly pay that because of its advantages of having direct contact with the customers, no naked shorting, no IPO underpricing because the company is selling the shares directly to the people. So this is really all it is a new way to do a DPO, a direct public offering, using direct registration. So the company is selling its shares directly instead of through an underwriter. Yes, sir.
How do you see the aftermarket working?
That's a very good question. Now, in order to have an IPO and in order to have a trading stock, a NASDAQ stock, you've still got to have market makers. And you still can, with this model, you can still list on the NASDAQ. If you have a $50 million capitalization, even if you have no revenues or no history or anything, if you have a $50 million capitalization at close, you can list on the NASDAQ, and you would have to have 3 market makers, so you've still got trading. However, if you can imagine 2 or 3 million people all holding one share, and you still can give them a reward. For example, we have an issued U.S. patent to apply this in the movie business to sell a single share of stock and give a copy of the movie as a dividend, thereby ensuring their investment. So you can still have reward-based equity financing in this as well. Okay, thank you.